And I think whatever we say today, James and I, it's very important that we think about getting the right match of your child's characteristics and skills to the school that you go into. So I stand here with a label that says that we're the most academic school in the United Kingdom over the last 10 years. Fabulous. But that means absolutely nothing if we're not the right school for your child. And therefore, finding out what we do and how we do it is super important. And I'm going to say nothing more about my school at the moment. Talk a little bit about changing schools at sixth form. Why should you consider moving your son and daughter, who's got so comfortable and is so happy in their lovely British boarding school at the age of 16? Why would you do it? Well, I speak from the heart here in saying, I didn't move my 16-year-old. She stayed exactly where she was for the previous 5 years of her education, because staying there was the right thing for her. If I could have moved my oldest, I would have done. And why would I have moved her? Well, I would have moved her to give her a chance to be what she wants to be in the future, not to live by the impressions that she had created in her past. She kept replicating the person she was for the first 16 years of her life, for the next 2, when actually she wanted to be something else. So give your child a chance to be their future. Give your child a chance to move into what they want to be, their future career, their future job, their future university choices. Going to a new place can allow them to take on different personalities and different characteristic traits which will suit their future, not suit their past. Been in boarding school for a very long time, watched students come through from a very young age. My youngest boarder was actually 6 years old, brought him all the way through to 18. I had his full life history in front of me. And even as a relatively balanced person, somebody who enjoyed being in boarding, I found it very difficult to forget that Johnny was the boy that let off the fire alarm every Friday night for almost 6 months in my junior boarding house. When he got to be 17, and I'm trying to fill in his UCAS form with him and remember the positives about him. So even with the best will in the world, as rational adults, we remember the good and the bad of people. Well, go somewhere new, and you've just got good. You've only got what you present to them right in front of you at that point in time. So first point, a chance to be your future, not your past. Secondly, in a boarding environment, we have the opportunity to give independent living skills. I don't know about you, but when I try to get my daughters to cook with me in the kitchen so that they can learn to cater for themselves when they go to university, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. When I tried to get my daughters to come with me and change the oil in the car and change the wheel, because it's what they might need to do in the future, it's not the easiest thing to do. But when my students in my boarding house, I tell them we're going to cook, or I tell them we're going to do car mechanics, it's easy, because I'm the boss, not just dad. And so creating an environment in which independent living skills can be taught and giving opportunities and advantages for students to take on these new skills, we can do it. It's what we do. It's part of our independent living skills package that you get. And this sounds silly. Why would you change schools so that your son or daughter could learn to use a washing machine, could learn to cook? Well, do you know, these are the things that make their lives happier. There's a recent survey came out from universities to show the reasons why people dropped out of university at the end of the first year. Well, if we ignore the fact that sometimes they make the wrong choice of course and the wrong choice of university, the next 2 highest things on the survey there were that they ran out of money because their fast food bill was too high, or because they had to keep buying clothes because they had to replace clothes that they hadn't washed and cleaned and ironed. Well, that's a ridiculous thing to say. We have failed as educators if young people have not got the independent living skills that they need to keep themselves in a good place in university. So schools, we're able to do that. Full boarding schools, we have that package built in for students to be able to be young adults. As well as those, moving into a boarding environment allows you to suddenly mix with a whole group of different people, particularly if you're coming to a school that you have chosen for a particular academic pathway. And people say to me, what's the most valuable thing that your students leave your school with? They expect me to say 5 A stars at A-level. They expect me to say a place in a G5 university. Actually, what my students leave with is an address book. An address book with over 700 names in it, if they're sensible, of the great and the good in education from my school. So, why move? Well, you should have an address book of your school already. Shift to another school and put another 700 names in your address book of the great and the good who will help you at some time in your future. If you're aspiring to go to a top school, which has top students in it, you have top contacts, top addresses, top people who help you 30 years down the line when you're starting your new company and you need people who you trust to work with you on your new venture. So, a lot of very good reasons why you should change schools at the age of 16 to move on with your education. But I come back to the beginning again with my point that changing schools is only the right thing to do if it's the right thing for your child. If your child is comfortable, is happy, needs the support of people around them to keep them in the right place, well, maybe moving them for the last 2 years of school is perhaps not the right thing for them. If your son or daughter requires constant assistance with resilience, you might want to think hard about taking them out of the comfortable area they are and move them into a sixth form college or a sixth form school. However, if they are ready for the change, then picking somewhere that has the support mechanisms to be able to help them to be their own version of great in the future is the right thing to do. Moving into a sixth form college like myself, like the one I have, and MPW that James is going to represent here, also means that you're moving into an age-appropriate type of education. I talked about cooking skills earlier on. Quite difficult to do in boarding houses of schools that go from the age of 7 to 18, because all of the cookers have the ovens disconnected, because national minimum standards tell you that you can't have an oven available for children. Well, all the ovens work in my college. They all have single ensuite bedrooms, so that they can learn to cook for themselves should they wish to. We do cater, but they can choose to cook if they wish. Age-appropriate boarding, age-appropriate education. We're preparing students to go to university, where they don't get to sleep in dormitory rooms, where they get their own space, because they're required to have good study habits. They're required to be able to manage their own lives in order to be their best version of great that they can be. And so going to a boarding sixth form college where they're in single ensuite bedrooms with their own kitchens available to them allows them to build their life skills, allows them to build their study skills, so that if they like to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and study before breakfast, as we know all of our sons and daughters do at age 16, then they can do that. And they don't have to share a room with somebody who likes to work from midnight until 2, as none of our children do, of course. So having a space in which you can be you, rather than being the you that you have to be because somebody else is in the room, is actually quite important. And so changing into a new school or changing into sixth form or age-appropriate boarding at the age of 16 is something which can be a very positive choice for young people to build independent living skills and look after themselves on their step into university.
I've got a different way of looking at it, which is why not at least looking into moving at sixth form? Because if nothing else, all it ever does is it either confirms to you that moving is a good thing, or it just confirms that where you already are is where you actually should be at this moment in time. One thing that 14 years has done for me is just confirm almost the obvious, which is that there isn't one school that suits absolutely everyone out there. And change is not always an absolutely dirty word to use. At the sixth form stage, make no mistake about it, we're at the business end of the school career now. This is where you start defining your future. This is where you start planning. This is where you start the directional side of things. And you need to make sure that you are in an environment that is necessarily going to take you forward for that. So actually research becomes incredibly valuable when you're looking into sixth forms itself. But I need to present to you a view of the sixth form college market, the day school market, because there's an awful lot of myths that exist around colleges that often makes people slightly question whether a move to a sixth form college is the right thing, or at least the right thing to start looking into. We were talking before, just before we came up, about this idea that all people ever see colleges is as a crammer school. And there's no such thing as a bad crammer per se. A crammer is the word that exists with colleges because that's how we started out. Going back all those years in time, colleges started out as crammers because they were there to get people into university when they came out of their schools. Now, across the years, schools have changed. Colleges have changed. They've turned into schools within their own rights. And they are more on a hybrid model now between a school, a college, and a very early form of a university system. So, is a crammer necessarily a bad thing? No, but the teaching ethos of a crammer has actually remained throughout that period of time. One of the saddest indictments of the English education system seems to be that it benefits those who know how to pass it, not necessarily always the most naturally gifted, hard-working, talented, etc. What colleges do, or what these crammer schools actually do, is just put more focus onto the actual teaching side of things. So the biggest myth, obviously, is surrounding the crammer side of things. A lot of people also question when they're moving or looking at moving from a school over to a college is, will it be too big a jump? Will it be too big a step? I think what you need to consider is who actually moves into the college-based system. And it's usually the same sort of students who make the jump across from GCSE to A-level. They are coming from the independent boarding school sector. Yes, they are moving for a change, but that change is not so seismic that they won't know how to cope with it. People do adapt to change at different rates, but ultimately they've had structure ingrained into them throughout their boarding school experience to date. But why do people do it? Why do people actually look? Why do they investigate this? Because when you're looking at moving from a school to a college actually has the luxury or the flexibility to look at variety and what a student actually wants to do. You're not restricted by tiers or blocks or told what subjects you have to do because that's what the timetable allows. Colleges actually can look at 43 different A-levels and say, what is it you really enjoy doing? And that has to be the biggest thing that any of us say throughout this entire exhibition here today, this weekend, is school should still be based upon doing things because you enjoy doing it. There is a necessity, obviously, to school, but you should enjoy doing what you are doing. So if we were to take a step back and actually look at every child as an individual, colleges are able to do that in a way that sometimes schools can't because you have too many students and too big a system that you have to operate within. So the biggest difference between the schools and the colleges will always be defined on class sizes and the ability to look at students as individuals. Colleges also like to champion the idea that we can look at students from the university perspective as well. One of the biggest problems or myths that people have about coming to a college system is how a university might necessarily regard you if you were to have gone to a grammar school or a college versus actually having gone to one of the bigger schools. The reality, and please correct me if you feel any differently, but the reality is it doesn't make a blind bit of difference. At the end of the day, grades talk, and it's the experience you have whilst at school that really actually matters. Universities do not mind that at all. Colleges actually spend more time working with and looking at the university system because we have the time to be able to do that. And colleges run specific programs to medicine, Oxbridge, dentistry, veterinary, engineering, whatever it might be, because they are purely focused on that sixth form market. So when parents come in and we have interviews and we look at students from the outset, always they're asking, why would I come to a college and what sort of students actually do well within a college system? Well, the type of students who actually do well are the ones who actually want to be there and that don't see it as a second choice. For the longest time, I suppose, colleges have always felt that they have to apologise and to actually justify their existence in the education market. Nowadays, I would almost call it a completely fair fight in terms of we are now more of students' first choice. And actually, being someone's first choice is a hell of a lot better than being their second choice within there. If you are regarding colleges as the alternative to getting into your sixth form, then it doesn't often mean that that is the right system for you. The reason why people should always step across to a college is for the diversity of choice, for actually being allowed to see their future in a different way, to actually want to grow up a little bit more, to almost get to university without getting to university yet. We need to place freedom and independence into inverted commas a little bit, because that's the other thing people regard when coming up to sixth form, is how much freedom and how much independence do people actually have once you've been through 10 GCSEs before, now you have all this free time. We need to place that a little bit into inverted commas because it's about not being naive and actually teaching them how to use that freedom. So colleges aren't about throwing you in at the deep end, telling you that you are now on your own, you're an adult, you should be working on this all on your own. It is about educating people how to be students, not just teaching them, but giving them the choice, allowing them to be the people they want to be, allowing them to join in on the things that they would want to join in on because they're with like-minded people doing similar things. Giving them that flexibility instead of telling them what they have to do, and guiding them, giving them a good education, not only in the classroom, but ultimately getting them ready for what comes next at university itself.